بسم الله والحمد لله وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, brothers and sisters, I'm going to talk about two things. The first is how to pray Salatul Eid at our houses. And the second one is I'm going to talk about Zakat al-Fitr. So let's start by how to perform Eid Salah in our houses. So as you know, this year we will not be performing Eid Salah in the masajids or outside in the parks. We won't be gathering, obviously, because of the pandemic of coronavirus. So what do we do? Scholars have spoken about a solution that we all have and that we can all do, is that we can pray Eid Salah in our houses. And they based themselves on narrations of the Sahaba who, when they missed Salatul Eid in the mosque, they would go home, like Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu. They would go home and they would gather their family and they would pray Salatul Eid. So some scholars have said that it is recommended to pray Salatul Eid in our homes. It is not mandatory. No scholar has said it is mandatory. So if you want to do it, you do it. If you don't want to do it, you don't do it. There's no issue. But some have said that it is recommended. It's mustahab. It's something that is good. So inshallah, we're going to follow that view. So this salah, Salatul Eid, that we will perform in our homes, it's the same way that we perform it when we perform it in the masjid. 2 units of prayer, 2 rak'ah, that's it. And the time, well, first of all, I'm going to talk about the time when you can pray it. So the time where you can pray it is from, you see the sunset time that you have on your prayer calendars. You have Fajr time, then you have sunset time. Well, you add 15 minutes to that, because those first 15 minutes are waqtul nahi. It's a time where it is not permissible to pray, because the people who used to worship the sun, they would worship the sun at that time when the sun would just rise, at the beginning of the sunrise. So 15 minutes after that the sun has risen, you can start praying Salat al-Eid. And you have from that time until midday, until probably 10 minutes before Dhuhr. So let me give an example. If Fajr is at 3:30, all right, and sunrise is at 5:15, that means you can start praying Eid at 5:30. And if Dhuhr is at 1:30, then you could pray Salatul Eid from 5:30 until 1:15, 1:20. So you have all that time to pray Salatul Eid. So this Salatul Eid, it's 2 rak'ah, 2 units of prayer. And in these 2 rak'ah, there's going to be many takbirats, as you remember when you go to the masjid. So the first rak'ah, you're going to say Allahu Akbar to enter the prayer. So that's the first takbir, the takbiratul ihram, to enter the prayer. Once you've entered the prayer, you will add from there 6 takbirats. So in total, it will be 7. The first will be takbiratul ihram. That's the takbir. It's a pillar of the prayer to enter the prayer. Then you will add 6 takbirats. So Allahu Akbar 1, Allahu Akbar 2, Allahu Akbar 3, until 7. After that, you read Surah Al-Fatiha. Out loud. And then after that, Al-Fatiha, you add a surah. You add a surah. And the best is to pray and to recite, that's the sunnah, Suratul A'la. Sabbih isma rabbika al-a'la. That's the best thing. Or if you don't know it, then another surah, and it's okay. You pray your rak'ah. At the end of that rak'ah, when you're in the sujood, you say Allahu Akbar to stand back up again. All right? So that's what you call takbiratul intiqal. It's the takbir that you make to go from one position to another. So when you're in your last sujood and you say Allahu Akbar to come up and stand up again, All right. Once you stand up, you do 5 takbirat. Right? 5 takbirat, 5 times. So you're in sujood. You say Allahu Akbar to stand up. Once you stand up, you say Allahu Akbar 5 times. That's it. So the first rak'ah 7 times. The second rak'ah 5 times. After you recite it 5 times, you've done the takbir 5 times. You pray, you recite Al-Fatiha, and then you add a surah to Al-Fatiha. And the sunnah is that you recite Surah Al-Ghashiyah. Hal ataka hadith al-Ghashiyah. If you don't know it, then recite another surah. That's it. You finish the prayer. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And you have prayed Salatul Eid. And there is no khutbah. There is no khutbah. So you just pray Salat al-Eid. Alright, so that's how to perform Salat al-Eid. Now I'm going to talk about Zakatul Fitr. So Zakat al-Fitr is an obligation, is mandatory upon every Muslim. And it is a purification. It is a purification for our fast from the vain and the false speech that we may have had during our fast, or obscene language that we may have used. The Ibn Abbas, he said, radiyallahu anhu, فرض رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم زكاة الفطر طهرة للصائم من اللغو والرفث. He said that the Prophet ﷺ, he made Zakat al-Fitr mandatory as a purification for the fasting person from al-laghwi, meaning from vain speech where there is no good and no benefit in it, والرفث, and obscene, the use of dirty and obscene language. وَطُعْمَةً لِلْمَسَاكِينَ, and as food, as feeding, as something where we would feed the poor people. And then he said, مَنْ أَدَّاهَا قَبْلَ الصَّلَاةِ فَهِيَ زَكَاةٌ مَقْبُولَةٌ. And whoever performs this zakat, handles out this food before the prayer time means the prayer of Eid, then it is a zakat that is accepted. وَمَنْ أَدَّاهَا بَعْدَ الصَّلَاةِ فَهِيَ صَدَقَةٌ مِنَ الصَّدَقَاتِ. But whoever delays his zakat al-fitr to after the prayer of Eid, then it is a sadaqah, like the sadaqahs that we can give at any time. So from this hadith, we benefit that first, this zakatul fitr is a purification of the our flaws and from the mistakes and from the deficiencies of our fast. Secondly, it is for the poor people, and it is food that we will give the poor people to to console them and bring joy to them on that day. And what else we benefit is that this zakat has to be given before the prayer of Eid and not after the prayer of Eid. All right, now that we're in this situation of coronavirus, how can we do it? So scholars have mentioned that it is permissible to handle out zakat al-fitr 1 or 2 days before Eid. As you know, there is a difference of opinion amongst the scholars. Do we give it in food or do we give it in money? So the majority of scholars, all right, the majority of scholars say that you can only give it in food, and the minority say that you can give it in money. But if we look at the general proofs of the Quran and we find in the Sunnah and the actions of the Sahaba, we find that the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, they only gave it in food. So we're going to choose the safer view that it is only food. All right, practically, how do we give food to poor people? So if you know some poor families that you can give food to, all right, if you know poor families that you can give food to, then there's an amount of food that you give to them, and it could be any type of food that we use, that we eat, and that we use products that we use in the UK. Like it could be lentils, it could be dates, it could be rice, it could be flour, it could be wheat, it could be dry raisins, it could be pasta, and I'm going to give you the amount of that. So zakat al-fitr, if you want to give it in food, all right, you have to give like the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, a sa' min ta'am. Sa' meaning is an amount of amount of food that you have to give. So the Prophet ﷺ, he used to do al-wudu with al-mud. He used to do al-wudu with al-mud. A mud is this, as if you put your two hands together. That's al-mud. And a sa' is 4 times this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So saying if you wanted to give zakat al-fitr to somebody, rice, you would put rice in your hands like that. Put the rice, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how it was done before. Now I could give you the weight of some of these products. So scholars have mentioned like lentils is 2 kilos and 100 grams. Rice is 2 kilos and 300 grams. Flour is 1 kilo and 500 grams. Wheat is 2 kilos and 100 grams. Dry raisins is 1 kilo and 700 grams. This is if you want to give it in food. So if you knew a family, a poor family, and you wanted to do this sunnah where you want to give it in food, and you want to give it personally in food, directly in food, then you give, best thing is that you give 2.5 kilos of rice, pasta, any product that we eat here, and that you give it to them. So that's when it comes to the amount. When it comes to upon whom it's mandatory, so it's mandatory upon every Muslim. Man, woman, old, young. It's mandatory upon every Muslim, and everybody who has money has to pay for it. So say that let's take the example of a household where there's 5 people. So you got the wife, you got the husband, and you got 3 children. Right? It's mandatory upon the wife, the husband, and it's mandatory upon the 3 children. If the 3 children, they don't have their own money, all right, then it's upon the husband to spend it and to pay for them. If the wife has her own money, then she has to pay for herself the zakat al-fitr. But if the father, the husband, says, you know what, I'm going to pay for you all, then the father has to pay for 5 zakat al-fitr, like if he was paying for 5 people. So saying if he wanted to buy rice, then he would buy rice for 5 people, meaning that 2.5 kilos times 5, that makes 15 kilos. He would buy 15 kilos of rice, and he would go to a poor person and he would give him that amount of food. That's when it comes to the amount of food. Obviously, today is going to be very difficult to find somebody, a poor person. We're already social distancing, and we don't see lots of people. It's going to be very difficult to find somebody. So practically, what can we do? So what I did, I went on a charity called Crisis Aid, and they had the Zakat Fitr option, meaning that you give them the money, and they, with the money, they're going to buy the food, and they're going to hand it out to the poor people. That's the easiest option. So you can go on this charity or another charity, give them the money. I paid £4 for one household. That means me and my wife. That's 2 people. So that was £8. And then they will get the money. They will buy the food, and they will distribute and handle out the food to the poor people. So that's the easiest option that you have. And that's about it. Zakat al-fitr. Just don't delay. Don't try to, if you can, pay the money now. So then, and you have the right to pay the money now, because anyways, you're entrusting them with the money that they're going to keep, and that they're going to use 1 day or 2 days, or probably exactly, to buy the food and give it out and distribute it to the poor. So that's the best option that you have. You won't have to go out and buy the food. You won't have the hassle to try to find a poor person or a poor family, and at the same time you will be inshallah fulfilling the sunnah that is to give food to the poor person, because this is a zakat of food. It's not a zakat of money. That's the difference between the zakat of money, where you give money to a poor person to enrichen him, to give him money so that he can survive, and zakatul fitr, where you give him food so that the day of Eid, he's happy, he has food, and he can eat, him and his family. That's the difference. But obviously there's a difference of opinion, but the majority of scholars, and this is the safer side, it's the safest side to give in food. And like I said, you'll be giving money to somebody to buy food for you. So it's, in the end, it's the same process for you, So, but inshallah, you'll be fulfilling the sunnah. So this is a little bit what I wanted to say about how to pray Salatul Eid and Zakatul Fitr. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullahu khairan. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.